Good afternoon, Jeff. How are you today?
It's cold and rainy here, but I'm excited.
Excited for what?
Breaking news. We launched a brand new cloud service aimed for people using Oracle databases, and you're going to tell us all about it. So I'm excited to sit back and let you do all the work.
I am going to tell you about it. So we have launched the database tools service in OCI. And like you said, it does allow people to create database connections very simply to access databases in their OCI tenancies that may be using public endpoints, but more importantly, it allows access to those databases that are in and using private IP addresses. So obviously you'd want to deploy your database in a secured subnet somewhere so that only the applications can get to it. But how do you get to it via, say, SQLcl or some web-based tool so I can work with the database or give access to certain people to work with the database and not have opening up the virtual cloud network or the subnet to the entire world. So that's where the database tool service comes and helps you do exactly that.
Cool. How do we get there?
Well, once you're in your OCI account, and again, this is all free for you to use, you will use this drop down, and in developer services, we have a new area called database tools, and you just click on database tools. Now, like a good cooking show, we have some ready in case anything that we build today fails, and these should work. But what we can do is we can actually build up a service and show you how it works. So it starts with creating a connection and give those connection details. We'll call it, my database connection, if I spell it right. And then what we can do is we can actually go and get the database information from your tenancy. So say I have an autonomous database, it'll list your autonomous databases, or I have an Exadata cloud service, it'll list all your databases. Or if I have, say, a VM database, it'll list those. So, and if there's only one, it's going to fill in pretty much all the information for you by default. This is an orgs testing box that we have in OCI that we run the database APIs against to test them. So we can use that. And then it's going to list all my pluggable databases with all their awesome names. So we're testing on 19C, so we'll use that PDB. So it kind of fills in all that information for you right here. And again, if it was an autonomous database, it would list your autonomous databases and you could pick from there. Or if you had an Exadata cloud service and Exadata cloud service databases have multiple databases on them, you would be able to select it from there as well. So it's nice that it guides you and you don't have to look for this information anywhere. It's just right here for you. So that's a really big help. A lot of times when you're creating connections with other services, or if you're creating a connection, you have to know and you have to figure out the database connection. You have to go and what's my database home? What's the database name? What's this? It all takes care of it for you. And then it also builds up your connect string as well. So then we have our username, and we'll call it, I think the DB tools is our username. You can, if for anything but an autonomous database, you can actually change the role. If you wanted a sysdba or something, you can enter that way. But here is an important part, is this is where we securely store the credentials, whether it's autonomous database credentials or just a regular database credentials. We store it in the OCI Vault. So I have a secret here already created with super secret password. But if I didn't, I can go and I can actually hit this button. I can create that secret and store that password securely in the vault, and then that password is retrieved only on access to the database, and it is encrypted in the vault as well. So we don't store, these connection strings in a database somewhere with the password sitting out there in plain text. It's all secured inside the vault, and the vault is specific to the customer. So we don't store it inside of some magic OCI vault that's shared.
My connections are stored in my stuff.
Yes.
My passwords are stored in my vault. Mm-hmm. So you have to have a vault before you come in here.
You do have to have a vault, and I believe creating a vault, not the virtual private one, which is basically uses hardware stuff. These are the regular vaults. They are free, so it's a free thing you can create. So you can, again, you can use this with an always free service. All this is free.
Yeah, I did that and it took me like 90 seconds maybe just because I was trying to think of good names.
Yeah. Now, if your database is in a private subnet, you can use these private endpoints, and we have a couple created here. We'll use this one, but this is going to this is what it does. So we need to have access to this database, and this database is in a private subnet inside a virtual cloud network. So by using this private endpoint, what we do is we create this access endpoint with the customer's virtual cloud network. And so that allows this endpoint to access the database that is in a private subnet using these private IPs. We don't open up ports, or we don't allow public access to this database all of a sudden. We're using these private endpoints to go and get to that database or allow access. Now, the thing about this is, when you do this, you are explicitly doing this. We're not doing this on behalf of you. We're not doing this in any kind of shady, sketchy way. You have to do this, so you are the ones that are creating access to this database. So we're not bypassing any security here. This is something that, here are the explicit steps to allow access to this database using a private endpoint. So that is just something to keep in mind. Once we have that, we can hit next. This is so if we had the autonomous credentials we needed to upload, we can upload them here, but we don't. This is just a regular VMDB, so then we'll just hit create, and this is going to create our connection.
It's creating the resource that we can then use to establish connections. Yeah.
Now we can validate it, and hopefully if I got everything right, we can hit the validate button, and it's going to say, do you want to validate this connection? Sure. And it says, hey, I'm connected to the database. And then here is the version of the database I'm connected to.
Which we could only know if we connected and then asked it, right?
Yep.
So
now we can start using some of our tools that we have created here. So we have two. We have the SQL Worksheet and we have SQLcl. So let's actually start with the SQL Worksheet. So I can click on the SQL Worksheet, Canvas here. So, so we can do a select star, if I spell it right. And look at, we have the...
This is how you know it's a live demo, because you're seeing Brian try to type. So it is a skimmed down kind of SQL Dev Web, but it still has some of the core features like the autocomplete, some syntax highlighting, some of the keyboard shortcuts are the same.
And then I can run it. And then I get my results down here. Just very simple.
And I can run any SQL statement or script because it's using the same engine that the rest of our tools use.
Exactly. So. It's all orgs behind the scene. And then what's great is I can download these in certain file formats. So if I want to share this or give this to someone or grab this information, I can grab it directly from here and just download it to my local desktop. Now, another great thing is, if you're using database tools or SQL Developer Web, how we have it with some of the databases, you're flopping between different connections and IP addresses. But like we have with SQL Developer on the desktop, we have that little drop down here where I could change to any of my databases right here. So if I go to this autonomous database here, now I'm using this autonomous database. And I can run the SQL here on this autonomous database. And I may not even have actually access to all objects table. I probably do. I'll be admin user. And there it is. And so I can continue to run that SQL. Now, what is cool is that we can actually save and load scripts directly from Object Store. So if I wanted to load a script, I can say, hey, I want to load a script from Object Store. Okay. Here's your bucket. I have a SQL scripts bucket. How about that? And then here are all the files in that bucket, and I don't have any files in my bucket apparently. So what I can do is I can go and create one. So we'll do a select star from trees, which is my favorite table in the database, which actually I think should come with all databases. I'm going to run this, and then we have all this cool information about trees in your neighborhood.
I mean, you would want a super tree cool in your neighborhood.
I would want a super cool tree. I don't have it. I don't have it. So what I can do is if I wanted to save this awesome SQL that I just wrote, I can hit save and go save to object store. And then here's the bucket that I want to use, and I can call it trees SQL or tree SQL. There we go. And then save that off. And so if someone wanted to share this or I wanted to use this, I'll clear this out. I can go, hey, I want to load my script, load from object store. Oh, here's my script right here, load. And then there it is. Here is my script, or the SQL that was in my script. So obviously you could have a little bit more complex than that, but this works for now.
So from this worksheet, I can run pretty much whatever I want on any database running in my cloud tenancy, regardless of the kind of Oracle database it happens to be. So it could be on a compute node that I've manually constructed a connection to. It could be an autonomous shared behind a private endpoint. It could be a VM, or even as you showed, our nice super bomb, awesome Exadata solution.
So again, with that create connection, I can select the database, and this is going to manually guide me through creating that database. Or if I do enter database information, it just asks you what's your connection string. So yeah, if you did have a database that's sitting on a compute VM that you just installed, you can go directly to it. Just give me the JDBC connect string right here.
Or in a Kubernetes cluster somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah. So just like it would be running anywhere else, this just, allows these things to be predefined. And then it's always secure. What we're always looking for people that share scripts that have passwords in clear text, that goes away. There's no password being shown anywhere ever, right?
Yes, exactly. And one of the important things about this is these connections here themselves are resources, OCI resources. So you can see they do have OCIDs to them. So you can secure these down to a particular user or group and say, okay, data scientists, you only have access to the database connections in the compartment data scientists. Or you can go down to a specific connection if you really wanted to with your policies. So I can now basically define these policies in groups and then give them out to specific sets of users. So only they can use these specific database connections. So it would be great, and maybe if you have a CI/CD process that goes to dev databases or production databases, or if you want to limit database access to a specific set of users. And so, you're using this user where if you ran a Cartesian query and basically, tried to bring my database to a halt, it's not going to happen because this particular connection has a resource principal on it, and it's only going to allow you to use X amount of CPU.
Or we've got clients, customers, aficionados out there that don't have 3 databases. They have 300 or even 3,000. And as a top level kind of Oracle infrastructure resource, I mean, you can use things even like tags. So you could say, these are my dev instances, these are my prod instances. So it's an easy way to filter and prevent mistakes, because some people won't use good names for their connections.
Yep.
Database 19 is prod, and you accidentally did that Cartesian. So that's the worksheet, and that's what the types of databases we can connect to. What's that second button do?
So this is kind of neat. So this is our SQLcl button. So if I hit this button, and I will right there, what this does is it uses the OCI Cloud Shell. And it's going to basically open up Cloud Shell. It's going to get all the information needed for that connection. It's going to run SQLcl and log me directly in, just as we see down here. So it logged me directly into this.
That went really fast. It's almost too fast to show off what it was doing. But it's literally, you click the button and it got everything it needed in order to connect to that database, including the password to the account from our vault that was secured with the key that we gave it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because as this user, I have access to that secret in that vault, as well as the connection information from the database connection.
And so this is the autonomous one. So you had another database that was a little bit more protected.
That's an autonomous that is I think this is an always free database, so it's using a public IP address as they do. But this one here, this is a protected autonomous database. This is an
They're all protected, but it's like layers of protection, right?
Yes, this is one that is basically using a private IP in a private subnet that's deep within some virtual cloud network somewhere. So getting to this usually is a challenge. Now, granted, you can set up network security groups between your application tiers and this database and only allow connections over certain ports and really tighten the connection down and say, okay, this IP address can access this database and only over this connection. So what we can do is using those private endpoints here is we can create that pathway between our private endpoint that we have in that virtual cloud network to this database, and then we can allow access to that database. Now, what is great is when I hit launch SQLcl with this type of database, it knows and it says, hey, let's use a Bastion to get to it using the Bastion service. And we have aptly named our Bastion Sebastian. And all I need to do is when I have that Bastion created, and I believe Bastion is a free service as well, I could hit launch.
So does this tunnel us under the sea?
It's going to tunnel us under the sea. And so as you see here, it's going to get the password, it's getting the wallet or the ADB credentials from the vault. And then what it's going to do is it's going to create an SSH tunnel with the Bastion and log me directly in. And so then I just log directly.
I don't even have to do the super post video cut to make that look fast, because it was pretty fast, even with the number of steps it did.
We can cut out some of it and make it even faster. That is pretty fast as it logs in. And so it's using the Bastion session to tunnel over on port 15, probably doing a port on 1522 to go and then launch a SQLcl, and then uses that Bastion with SQLcl to directly log.
So this is Cloud Shell, or a Cloud Shell extension we made that kind of hotwires SQLcl into it, but it's the full-blown SQLcl, right? This isn't like some neutered SQLcl that can't do all the cool stuff that I can do on my desktop. So just hit help just to show all the commands that you can do.
We can do that.
That's the lazy web.
Yep, it's full-blown SQLcl.
Very cool. So I could like run queries, spool out the files, use the OCI integration to put them over into Object Store, run data pump, all kinds of cool stuff.
Oh yeah, you can do anything you want.
Awesome. So that's most of what we can do with this service. What else? I mean, like, let's say I've got some application that I want to be able to take advantage of these connections that I've defined. Do we have anything for that?
Eventually, what we're going to have is we're going to have the ability for applications to directly access these connections using the OCID. So SQLcl, I think, is going to be the first to be able to do it. So if you're running SQLcl on premises.
Right, our applications.
Yep.
Like SQL Dev, ORDs.
So again, as we said, behind these, there are the OCIDs or the OCIDs. And what you can do is, or what we're going to be able to do is, let's say if I was running SQLcl, let's say you were at home on your desktop and local, you can basically say, hey, I want to connect to this database, and SQLcl is going to say, oh, well, if you want to use the database connection service, here's a list of the database connections, and we'll probably list them by name. Here's the names that you have access to, and then you'll say, okay, connect OCI database connection name. And what it's going to do is it's going to find that database connection via the OCID. It's going to go and get all the information for you and then log you directly in to that database using that OCID, and have all the information it needs to do it directly from either like a SQLcl or maybe SQL Developer or any of the tools that we use within our group. So that'll be really, really nice to see that now, instead of needing to get all this information or knowing the secrets or knowing the passwords, I'll be able to do that. And then we'll probably push that out into other development platforms, JDK, Python, and what have you. So that, we're not giving people passwords or giving people, things to log into. It's great for, say, even CI/CD processes. If I want to go into and develop, push this to production or UAT, I'm just going to provide it with the OCID or the connection name. And when it runs through that CI/CD process to create that database or to access that database and deploy the code, it's not going to go and need to get passwords or anything.
Yeah.
It's just going to use that OCID.
Well, the other nice thing is if a password expires, I can fix
Exactly.
it in one place and everybody gets the new one. And by everyone, I mean whoever's got access to those OCIDs or those resources.
And on the flip side, if you want to cut access off to people, you just go and either change the password or kill the connection. And then new people can no longer access that connection. Well,
there's so much granularity in terms of granting access to things in our cloud infrastructure here. Just lots and lots of cool stuff to do with it.
You can revoke them out of the group. You can revoke the whole membership or delete the user, and then they'll lose access to that because they no longer have access to OCI, thus they no longer have access to these database connections. So yeah, it works. So yeah, exactly. And it's an important point that you made though, when the password changes or expires. So if I have this database connection set up into 15 different places, I'm probably waiting for somebody to call me and say, hey, it doesn't work in 15 different places, because I probably don't remember where I did because I didn't write them down. But if I do it in one place, I only have to change it.
Well, our SQL Developer Web has user management screens that tell you when the passwords are about to expire. And it'll be great when we have that baked into this.
Yes.
By default, being able to launch, the power of that on any database I have running from a single screen, assuming I have those connections defined. I think it's also kind of nice if you don't have the connection yet, the create button's right there to go build it. You don't have to click around from page to page. Exactly. All right, so I wanted to make this 15 or 20 minutes. I think we're at 97 minutes before I cut it. Are we missing anything big? Hey, does this thing have docs, or where do we go to learn more?
Yeah, if you want to learn more, you can go to our documentation. We have our documentation in the OCI docs. I think actually it's now docs.oracle.com, and we are listed. We are a top level service, so you just look for the database tool service, and there's documentation in there on how to create your connections, how to set them up with private endpoints if you need to do that, how to use the SQL worksheet, what you can do with that, some best practices, and actually some sample policies that you could use to start setting up the policy structure for allowing access to specific connections.
Yeah, I don't want anyone messing with my trees. So
that's right, you don't.
And then even though this is free, it's still supported, right?
Yes, it is supported. We have been talking. We have spun up an entire support organization, a bunch of people we brought over to just support this service.
Very cool. Well, now it's time to start having customers use this and tell us what they love and what they don't like. And this video is in a public place, so if you want to share that feedback here, just leave us a comment. Of course, after you've liked and subscribed, as the YouTubers would say. And we'll have links for more information in the comments. And I want to thank everyone for their time today, and we'll maybe have some more updates on this topic as we go forward.
Great.